Thanks for being with us on our online community and just checking us out. And thanks for being part of our Weekend Thoughts. So what exactly is Weekend Thoughts? Well, Weekend Thoughts is just something that we came up with several weeks ago to help us as I prepare for different messages. There's certain things that might come to mind, or might say, that really, I'd love to use that, but there's just so many different ways you can go sometimes with a specific message. So Weekend Thoughts is just another way to, I can't get everything into a weekend message, so just kind of to help us steer us, to help us give us something to think about throughout the week on that specific big idea, whatever the main idea is for that weekend. So that kind of gives you some insight into what exactly Weekend Thoughts is all about. But this past weekend, we continued in our series, The 7 Churches. And looking at, these love letters that Jesus sends to these 7 churches, we talked this weekend about the love letter that he sent to the church at Sardis. And we saw where this church had become complacent. Jesus calls for it to wake up. And if you haven't been able to be with us to experience this weekend, then let me just encourage you just to hit pause right now and to go check out our weekend experience and to check out this past weekend's message where we talked about this letter that Jesus sent to the church of Sardis, and then just catch back up with this Weekend Thoughts. Part of what we talked about this weekend was about the idea of complacency, settling, getting comfortable. I don't know if you've seen the various commercials, the progressive commercials, and specifically the one where there's, I guess you would call him kind of a life coach, and he's kind of walking along with these individuals that have bought homes, and he's kind of coaching them through how they don't end up like their parents, or they don't become their parents. And one of them I specifically like, and is because there's this guy, and he has this shirt on, and he's about to buy the shirt, and the guy that's coaching him looks at him and says, "Now, just think about this for a minute, have you seen this shirt before?" And he actually notices that he's got the shirt on that he's about to buy, but the guy decides to buy it anyway. For me, all of us get comfortable. We have our comfortable places we like to be. We have a place as a family, or I have a place, and that I love to vacation. We love to vacation as a family. We become comfortable with that. And anytime another place will come up for us to go on vacation, I kind of stum and, kind of hum and holler through it because, like so many of you probably, you have your place that you like to go. You know where the restaurants are at, you know how the traffic, you know how to get around, specific rush hour and different stuff like that. When we have our comfortable clothes. Right now, the shirt I have on, I'm intentionally wearing it for a reason. One is, I as old as it is, it's just one of my many t-shirts that I love just to wear. It's comfortable. It's got a hole right up here on the sleeve, and it's faded and all that, but it's comfortable. And the shorts, some of my shorts that I love to put on, it's just they're ragged, but they're comfortable to me. I used to have a pair of running shoes. In fact, I've been known to use duct tape. Let's just say use duct tape to continue using the same running shoes that I use. We become comfortable. And before you laugh, just wait a minute, think about your own life. We all become comfortable in different things, whether it be a piece of clothing, whatever it is, we like to be comfortable. I would dare say that some of you probably that are watching this video probably have been sitting in the same place at church for years. Probably for some of you, when you go visit a restaurant, when you go out to eat, for some of you, maybe you've been going to the same restaurant on the same day at the same time for years, sitting in the same place for years. We become comfortable. And to a point, that's okay. But at the same time, as Jesus was addressing this church at Sardis, they had become comfortable. They were complacent. And Jesus says, wake up. Wake up. You know, we have to be very careful as a community of believers, as the church, or individually in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, in that relationship, that we don't let down our guard, that we don't become so comfortable. There's places at times when we will look at other people's lives, or we'll look at other churches or other community of believers, and we'll hear that something has happened to that community of believers. We'll hear that something has happened to an individual. A sin has made its way into their lives. They've given into the specific temptation, and we hear about that and say, well, I'll pray for them, and that's so sorry to hear, but I'm so thankful that that will never happen to me. That will never happen to me. You know, we are setting ourselves up. When we say that, we are setting ourselves up for Satan just to say, oh yeah, you think it'll never happen to you? Let's just see. And Satan weaves his way in. In fact, Matthew, over in the Gospel of Matthew, he actually gives us some insight into this. There's a time in Peter's life, we see it over in Matthew 26, where there's this dialogue. Jesus has been speaking. He's talking about some various things. He's talking about, he's sharing with them what is about, with the disciples, basically what is about to happen to him. What he's about to go through. And how he will be doing this on his own. And talks about deserting. And Peter says, he says, Lord, he says, not me. He says, I will never desert you. I will never deny you. If that means I have to die for you, I will die for you. And Jesus responds back. He says, Peter, I hear you. And in fact, Peter, I know you love me. But here's the truth of it. You are going to deny me. In fact, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter says, no, Lord, I won't deny you. I promise I won't deny you. I will die for you. In fact, if you look there, and so often we miss this part of it, that not only does Peter say that, but it actually says in verse 35 of Matthew 26, it says, and all the other disciples vowed the same thing as Peter, that they would never deny Jesus, that they would never, that they would be willing to die for him. Well, if we move on forward into what transpires next, we see that they go into the Garden of Gethsemane, and we see that they struggle to stay awake, and we see that Jesus is actually apprehended and he's taken on trial, and we see that Peter follows behind, and Peter's trying to get a glimpse into what is going on. And in various parts of this time in Peter and disciples in Jesus' life, we see that Peter actually does end up denying Jesus. When we get to the point where Jesus is there on the cross, we see that who's there with Jesus? We know that Mary's there, and but as far as the disciples are concerned, the only disciple that's there with Jesus at the cross is John. The rest of them are nowhere to be found. They had denied Jesus. Now, I believe that these disciples were, they genuinely believed that they would not deny Jesus. They would not give up on this relationship. I believe that they loved Jesus. I believe that although they didn't understand everything and they didn't understand what was about to happen, I believe that they had an understanding that, hey, this is something that we want to be a part of, and I really believe they thought they were willing to die for it. But I also believe that they had grown so comfortable in their own strength, in this relationship, and what was going on in their relationship, that it gave Satan a way to weave his way in. Till we see that they actually did deny Jesus. The same thing's true with us, is it not? At various times, just like we get comfortable in other things, we get comfortable in our clothing, we get comfortable where we eat, we get comfortable and we have our specific chair that we want to sit in, and or we have our specific place that we want to go for vacation. And when we go on vacation, those certain restaurants that we've been going to for years and all those various things, it's not that those things are wrong. But at the same time, if we're not careful, specifically in our relationship with Jesus, and as we pursue this relationship with Jesus, that we settle and Satan weaves his way in. And now Satan can weave his way in multiple different ways. One is that we're not willing to take the next steps as needed. That Jesus is saying, I really want this for you in your life. I really have this plan for you. But we're comfortable where we're at. We don't want to deal with the change. We don't want, a lot of times, I don't want to buy a new shirt because I'm comfortable in the shirt I am, I don't want to I don't want to have to do what needs to be done to make it feel like this shirt. Therefore, I think you understand what I'm talking about. Jesus is tugging, he's pulling, and we become comfortable. We become comfortable in his word. We become comfortable in who we are in a relationship with him. And then Satan weaves his way in. And we got to be careful of that. No matter where you're at right now in your relationship with Jesus, no matter whether you are a brand new in this relationship with Jesus, or whether you've been serving with Jesus for years, wherever we're at, Jesus, relationship is a give and take and growing and all these different things. And, Jesus has so many plans and desires for us, just like he did for the disciples. If you move forward on into the story, we know that after Jesus rose from the dead, one of the things that Jesus does before he ascends back up into heaven is that he restores Peter. Yes, Peter did deny Jesus. Yes, the disciples did deny Jesus, but specifically we see this time period where Jesus and Peter have this dialogue, and Peter is commissioned, and Jesus restores. And we see this restoration that takes place in this relationship to a point where Peter is at a point where right now in Matthew 26, where he says, I won't deny you. And again, I believe that he really thought that, and I love you, I will die for you. It wasn't until later on that Peter finally realized. And we see that over in the first part of Acts, on what we call the day of Pentecost, where Peter and the disciples, they stood before the people and they shared this amazing story. They shared about Jesus. They shared about Jesus. We have to become careful about being comfortable as a believer in Christ, as someone that's walking in this relationship with Jesus. And I want to just challenge us this week. What is it that you've grown comfortable in? What is it that Jesus is maybe stirring up within you? That he's saying, you know what? And say, what is it? What is it maybe where you've been struggling, or maybe you've struggled in a past sin or something like that? And Satan just keeps bringing that up, and Jesus is saying, you know what? Don't go back to that. That is forgiven. That's forgotten. That's over with. I'm calling you here. I have this plan for you. I have this dreams for you. And don't get so caught up, or we shouldn't get so caught up in this whole idea that we look at other people and say, well, that'll never happen to me. That'll never happen to me. Because again, that gives Satan an opportunity to weave his way in. You guys have a great week. And we'll talk later.